Jeremiah Fears showed you exactly what you wanted to see in Summer League while Derik Queen struggled, but I'm going to tell you why his performance wasn't as concerning as you might think. It's Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Friday, day after the Pelicans Summer League debut, falling to the Minnesota Timberwolves 98-91. Look, the final score doesn't matter here. It's how did the rookies and the young guys play? And you saw a great performance from Jeremiah Fears. I'll tell you what you saw from him and why that's encouraging going forward. Derik Queen, though, struggled, but it's not as bad as you think, and I'll break down why in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, plus a couple of other really good performances in there for New Orleans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And don't forget, you can watch us every weekday at 10:30 a.m. over at the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. All right, let's get into it. Jeremiah Fears looking good in Summer League. We're going to start with him, then we'll get into Derik Queen, then we'll get into everybody else here. But if you look at the stat sheet for Jeremiah Fears, if you didn't watch this game, especially because it was at like 2:30 p.m. Central, and you just looked at the box score, you'd see 4 of 12 shooting for Jeremiah Fears for 14 points, along with 7 turnovers and 6 fouls. And you'd be like, that's not good. And admittedly, those specific statistics, aren't particularly great, but that's not what we're looking for here in Summer League. It's, do these guys make an impact? Are their games kind of working? And I think when you watched Jeremiah Fears play, it absolutely did. You saw what you wanted to see from him as a point guard, right? He was controlled and running the offense, particularly in the pick and roll, and shows very good vision and at times pretty good patience too. He let plays develop. He knew how to draw defenders to him. He knew how to throw defenders off of him as he was playing downhill and attacking. He certainly had a couple of moments where he looked a little bit too sped up. There were 1 or 2 lob attempts he had that that his teammate wasn't ready for just there. And so he's playing a little bit too quick. But look, that's to be expected. That's just going to come with time for a guy who's not even 19 yet and will turn 19 this year. And to go out and just play against, NBA players, to play and impact the game like he did, I think was really encouraging. You saw why he was the 7th overall pick. Not, you saw why he wasn't a top 5 pick, but you saw why he was the 7th overall pick in this draft. And you saw that he can impact an offense in a very, very positive way. He came out and also hit a 3. That was the first bucket he made. And that was just encouraging to see that he's willing to shoot that 3, that he can make that 3-point shot as well, because the shooting is one thing he is going to need to develop and work on. What I also loved about how he played in this game was they used him a little bit off ball too. He was the starting point guard for the team, as he should have been, but this was someone that didn't need the ball in his hands always. He was willing to work off ball, go around, cutting, fighting through off ball screens, things like that to get open. And in particular in the first half, I think it was, you saw him cut off ball, get the ball, then create in a short pick and roll type situation that ended with a lob attempt. And that was great to see from him, being able to influence the offense in that capacity. Personal fouls, that's going to happen, particularly in your first Summer League game, particularly because he hasn't played for a little bit here, and the game probably felt very fast at times. You're going to foul. That's just how that's going to go. But you saw him out there showing zero fears, right? That's the whole thing. Zero fears with him, which is just fun. And he showed that by getting downhill and attacking. He got the ball and he created by driving to the basket, playing downhill and drawing fouls. He got to the free throw line 6 times in this game. Earlier in the week, once I uploaded the correct show, I talked about that being maybe the biggest, most important skill set that he's going to bring to the team. I don't care as much about the shooting. I don't care much about the fouls. Is he playing downhill, drawing defenders, getting fouled, and going to the line? You pair that with Zion Williamson, and that's the type of two-man combo, just in terms of drawing fouls, that it's going to get this team into the bonus early, get them a free throw advantage, and it's literally the most efficient shot that you can have in the NBA. That is a massively important skill for a starting caliber point guard in the NBA, and Jeremiah Fears showed that he could do it. You saw moments of him looking a little bit undersized, but you also saw some really good finishing for him. The Minnesota Timberwolves were just kind of blocking everything here. It shows New Orleans maybe needs a little bit more size overall, but Fears showed that that wasn't the biggest deal and that he can still impact the game in a very, very positive way. I'm excited to see him in the second game and see where he can grow. I'd like to see that three-point shot be a little bit more consistent. Certainly, you'd like to see the turnovers cut down in this one. But again, that's to be expected. 7 turnovers isn't a great number. But look, Rob Dillingham, who's a second-year player, had 7 turnovers in this game for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So it's not one of those things where you look at this and you're like, oh, what the heck? He's a bust. No, that can happen in Summer League, especially some of these early games as guys start to settle in and feel a little bit more comfortable. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next segment here when we focus on Derik Queen. These guys haven't had a lot of practices. They're just kind of going out and freelancing for the most part, and it's just kind of chaos. And I do think that's the type of at least set up right now that Jeremiah Fears is going to be able to thrive in. If he's getting better every game in Summer League, I'm going to feel really good about where he'll be going into the regular season. I think in this game you saw, he belongs in the NBA and is going to have a pretty bright future ahead of him, particularly with that downhill attacking style. The shot and shooting and everything else will come. He's going to figure out how to use, the shiftiness in his game to avoid and get around some of those potential shot blockers with, what you saw here in this game against Minnesota. I think they had 10 blocks in the game, something like that. 12 blocks in the game, even more so, right? Darren Jair had 7 block shots alone, right? You're not going to go up against that kind of defense every single level, let alone in Summer League too. So I'm less worried about that. I think you saw what you wanted to see from Jeremiah Fears, the relentlessness in attacking, how you can use him a little bit off ball too, so you can play him with a Jordan Poole, you could play him with a DeJounte Murray or any other veteran guard, Jose Alvarado that the team brings in. All of that's going to lead to really good things from him. He showed off why he was the 7th overall pick in this draft. Nothing to really change my mind about that. And look, we're not going to massively overreact to one Summer League game, good or bad anyway, because largely this isn't really predictive of much. Whether they play well all games or horrible all games, it's not really going to change kind of the trajectory of their future, of their NBA careers. But I liked what we saw from Jeremiah Fears in this one, finishing with 14 points on 12 shot attempts. That'll get better with time. 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 7 turnovers, 6 personal fouls. You get 10 personal fouls in Summer League, so it's really hard to foul out. But let's focus on Derik Queen. He did not play well, at least in the first half. Got better as the game went on. People are going to freak out about this performance in a negative way, and I'm going to tell you why you don't need to worry about that whatsoever. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends and family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands, and that's where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to go with you. Game Time makes it all possible. So Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple, and prices on the app actually drop closer to you get to first pitch or tip off here. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of buying. I'm in LA right now. I'm planning to go to another Dodger game. That's what I use. Game Time to get my tickets to go see the biggest stars in any sport. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. And for your second listen, Locked On NBA Game Night. Cooper Flagg played yesterday. Do you want to know how he did for the Dallas Mavericks? We're covering it over at Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night, including Summer League. So go make that your second listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I will be on there on the Friday episodes. We're talking Pels. We're talking Nets. We are talking Cooper Flagg as well. So let's get into the Pelicans' other rookie. And the context around this one, I think is going to be really interesting because I saw the reactions to how Derik Queen played on social media, on X, on Twitter, and it wasn't kind to him. And truthfully, his first half was bad. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was bad. He knows it's bad too. He played much better in the second half of this game, but people are going to crush him and crush the Pelicans for that bad performance. You know, without even getting into how he played, which we'll do in a second here, you know, for better or worse, you know, his performance is going to be picked apart because of the draft night trade and the risk and how much they paid to go move up and get him. That's what this is going to come down to. People, you can't remove him and those expectations. That places bigger expectations on him, and you can't, unfortunately, remove that from him. It has nothing to do with him, right? He didn't create these expectations. Troy Weaver, Joe Dumars put these heavy expectations on him. So when he's getting killed on social media, look, if he was just the 13th overall pick and they didn't trade next year's pick to move up and draft him, this wouldn't be as big of a deal. People killed the Pelicans on draft night for that. Look, fair or unfair, rightfully or not rightfully, you know, whatever. And they're going to kind of double down on that. If Queen, you know, if people like crush the Pelicans in that trade and then Queen plays poorly, they're going to use that as justification for their original thoughts, right? That's what you're seeing a lot of here. You can't, unfortunately, remove him from these expectations and from that trade. They're going to be linked together forever, or at least a very, very long time. And so people are going to be like, you know, I saw people like, this is the worst summer league performance I've ever seen. And it's like, what are we doing here if that's being said, right? Like, that's such a hyperbolic statement that's only to do with the trade, right? If you never had this trade, even if you played like he did, you wouldn't say something like that. You know, you'd just be like, yeah, 13th overall pick is struggling. With Derik Queen in this game, you saw what makes him such an intriguing prospect, but you saw all of the flaws and concerns about him very much on full display. It's like the full Derik Queen experience, right? If we can say something like that right now. And so you saw that, right? There were concerns about his conditioning. Didn't look quite in shape as you would like him to be. The defense was not good, particularly off-ball defense, looking just very lost. You know, the latter part of that, the defense, I mean, he's a rookie. Rookies aren't good defensively ever, other than like Herb Jones or a few outliers. I'm not overly concerned about him struggling on defense in his first game. Like, if that's what you're pointing to, be like, oh my God, that was a terrible trade, or he's a bad pick, or he's going to be a bust. Like, get out of here. Most of these guys in this game, other than Behringer, did not look good defensively, right? Like, what are we doing here if that's what we're kind of focusing on with that type of hyperbole after one summer league game? Queen might not be good, but it's not going to be based off of this performance. The first half, though, he struggled, right? You know, he didn't really make a basket until, you know, midway through the third quarter here. In the first half, let me pull the numbers up right now. He was 0 for 1, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 turnovers, 1 personal foul. In the second half, you saw him go 5 for 8. So significantly better there, including making a 3, getting to the line 4 times, 7 rebounds, including 5 defensive boards, 3 turnovers, and 2 personal fouls. If you're just looking at that, his second half stat line of 13 points on 8 shot attempts, 5 of 8, with 7 rebounds, 3 turnovers, 2 personal fouls, a made 3, you'd feel really good about his performance. You know, in the first half, what you saw from him was him just being tentative and not sure what to do or how to, he didn't know how to impact the game. And that's really what it came down to. And that's understandable. You know, when you look at Summer League as a whole, and in particular big man, Summer League is very much a guard-driven type of style, let's call it, right? You have a lack of offense and just much more chaos and freelancing, which really allows guards to shine. So if you're a big man and you're kind of relying on some guard play to get you going, it can hurt because one, maybe the guards aren't that good, or two, they're just kind of like moving through chaos and freelancing and just kind of having this improvisational aspect to their game that isn't going to suit big men particularly well. And at times in the second half when you saw Derik Queen playing like a guard, trying to face up and take people off of the dribble, that's the type of thing that really helps. And that's when he started to settle in and kind of find his spots, play more aggressive, and do all of those things. And kind of not erase the bad first half that he had, but kind of change the perception of him as a player. But because people are kind of tied to that draft night trade, you're not going to hear a lot about that. And I do think that's unfair to Derik Queen in a sense. I'm not saying he played great. He didn't. There's a lot of room to grow and improvement. And trust me, he knows this. Saying after the game, this quote comes from Will Guillory, on what he's looking forward to in his second Summer League game. Quote, just looking for redemption. I've got to redeem myself. I know I've got 82 games, but I know Twitter and probably Instagram are going crazy right now. I've just got to redeem myself for them and to quiet all the outside noise. Just go out and play better. It's as simple as that, right? With Queen not really knowing where to be, part of that's going to come to, they had like 5 practices in 3 days. It was probably overwhelming. It's a lot. 5 practices isn't a lot in general, but that's a lot to kind of condense. And again, you're not running like massive offensive sets and things like that here. That's not conducive to Derik Queen, and it's just going to take a minute. I would expect a much better performance in his second Summer League game, and if he does that, that kind of eases a lot of the concerns about what we saw from him in this one here. And again, he's going to be judged, probably you could consider it unfairly based on the draft night stuff. First half, not great. Worst performance I've ever seen. Just get out. Like, that's so dumb. That's so dumb. Like, what are we doing if that's the case? The conditioning is going to need to get better. That kind of brings up questions about professionalism and things like that. That does worry me a little bit. When you have a team with Zion Williamson as well, like that's unfortunately a concern. But he'll be fine. They're going to get an extra practice in. He'll get more time to kind of adjust to his teammates and try and develop a little bit of chemistry here. And if they do that, like, he's going to look significantly better. Nothing about the way he played made me concerned that he was going to be a bust or anything like that. I'm not worried about his defense. The conditioning, just work on that and we'll be fine. But overall, that second half was encouraging for him. Finishing with 13 points on 5 of 9 shooting, like, that'll work. 10 rebounds, and in particular, it being on the defensive glass too. This team is going to need help with defensive rebounding. Him going out and grabbing 8 defensive boards, only 2 offensive rebounds, right? You can look at Missi and be like, 13 rebounds. 6 of them were offensive. That's important. It's not to take away from it, but this team needs defensive rebounding as well. And you saw that from Derik Queen. You also saw a lot of the playmaking of him, right? The guard skills, and why we were curious if could they run their offense through him? Could he act as that big man offensive hub a la Alperen Şengün, or to a lesser extent Zion Williamson, right? And Derik Queen showed that off with 3 assists. He had that driving baseline behind the back pass to Hunter Dickinson for an easy 2 as the trail man there. I love that type of playmaking from that position. When the ball hits his hands, he can keep the ball moving, keep the ball flowing, and then the rhythm in the offense, right? The tempo that they want to play with. You have pace, which simply measures possessions, but there's tempo, which is how quickly are you passing the ball? How quickly are you moving the ball? All that stuff in the half court that's kind of involved in a possession. If they want to play with tempo, right? They're showing that they can really do that here with Derik Queen, and I think that's important because big men can kind of sometimes be black holes on offense. You get them the ball, it never leaves their hands again. That's not great. Derik Queen, that's not the problem. The turnovers are going to come down. He wasn't just fouling like crazy or anything like that. Overall, he looked fine when you factor in the second half, but people are being hyperbolic about this. It's not as bad as what you're reading on social media. It wasn't good, but it wasn't as bad as what you're reading on social media. Coming up next, let's look at Yves Missi, Micah Peavy, and Lesser Quinones, as well as we wrap up talking about the Pelicans' opening Summer League game. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And don't forget, you can watch us every single weekday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network at 10:30 a.m. Look, if you got an office, you got a waiting room, throw on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network on the TV. Get the whole 2 hours of Locked On Saints, Locked On Pelicans, Locked On LSU, Locked On SEC. You may have seen our shows advertised outside the Smoothie King Center too, which is super cool. For your second listen, it's Locked On Saints. Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold. New helmets, new jerseys, a new fresh look for the Saints. I dig it. Ross Jackson digs it too. He's covering all the sartorial stuff over at Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make them your second listen today. So let's continue talking about Summer League. Pelicans losing 98-91 to the Minnesota Timberwolves in their opening game. Next game is going to be against the Lakers on Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. I want to go into a couple more performances here. Yves Missi came out looking aggressive in this game, looking like he was kind of the man for the team and trying to just put on a very good performance in the first half, in the second half too. 14 total shots, struggled making them. You saw just block party for the Minnesota Timberwolves. 5 of 14, but I like that he was the leading shot taker here. 7 defensive boards, 6 offensive, 13 total rebounds, 2 steals. 13 points there. Look, he was good. Down low, he was kind of making it tough for the Minnesota Timberwolves to score in the paint. I like to see a little bit of rim protection from him. He was trying to do a little bit more offensively than he would be doing during the regular season, and Summer League is the perfect time for him to try and do that, but just looking very active, looking like a leader for this Pelicans Summer League team. That's what you want to see out of him. You'd like to see a couple more block shots. You'd like to see a smoother offensive game. That's going to come with time. You know, he was always going to be a work in progress that was going to take a little bit longer than maybe some other guys. But, you know, I like that they started him alongside Derik Queen to go with the double big lineup. You know, you saw him active as a lob man for Jeremiah Fears. That's really encouraging too, because if he can be more of a lob threat than he was last year, and he started to really show flashes of it during the regular season, that's really kind of changing his role for this team and becoming a vertical lob threat is vertical spacing. That's important to, you know, helping guys like Jeremiah Fears, helping guys like Zion Williamson as well. I want to look at Lester Quinones too. He on a two-way deal for New Orleans, having played a bunch of NBA minutes last year, looked like an NBA player compared to the rest of these guys. He finished as the leading scorer for the Pelicans here, 20 points off the bench on 7 of 12 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal. Look, if you're looking for wing depth, I don't want to say it's an eye-opening performance. It's Summer League, right? We're keeping our expectations in check. But he looked like an NBA player. He looks like a guy that doesn't need to be playing in Summer League at this point in time, and either keeping him on a two-way or signing him to that final roster spot and then opening up a two-way looks like it could be a smart move. I thought he played pretty well for New Orleans down the stretch last year when he's getting real minutes. You got to be wary of, are those minutes meaningful? Does it actually show something? TBD on all of that, but I think with Quinones, he showed like he can be an impactful NBA guy. The shooting's important. They need more shooting on this team. If you can get some of that from Quinones, who's got good size, who can kind of play a couple of different positions, whether it's the guard or the wing, that's what you want to see from him. He's active on the defensive side of the ball as well, but the shot falling, that is definitely going to be a very eye-opening thing. Micah Peavy on the wing for New Orleans, too, I thought played really well in this game. Their second-round pick, 11 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 1 of 2 from 3, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers, 7 fouls. We don't care. His defense overall, minus the fouling, was really good. You know, he looked like not a 3-and-D guy because you didn't see enough offense from him, but he looked like a very good, above-average defender. You need some help on the wing again. You need a little bit more defense for a team that's gone kind of offensive heavy. He definitely showed that in here. I like that he was active overall on the glass too. 7 rebounds in 25 minutes of action from the wing position is pretty good. They're going to need help on the defensive glass, so we know that he can contribute there. You know, playing kind of clamping down defense in spurts at above average defense otherwise, that's great. I don't expect him to be Herb Jones level good on defense, but he definitely showed a couple of touches, a couple of flashes there that this is someone who might contribute a little bit more than what we were expecting. I'm excited to see him in Summer League. Jeremiah Fears, Derik Queen, too. Those are the guys that I'm really watching on this team. Antonio Reeves, by the way, in the starting role, got 10 points on 5 of 9, shooting 0 for 2 from 3. I don't think that's going to particularly help him a ton. Hunter Dickinson, one of the two-way guys, 5 points, not getting a ton of run there, so I don't know if there's too much to try and read into that. Trey Alexander with a rough shooting game, 0 for the field for 2 total points at the free throw line, but 2 assists. The main guys are the ones that we're watching for, and Fears played well. Queen played better in the second half. That's important here, I think. Missi did what he needed to do. Micah Peavy definitely showed what you wanted to see from him. Look, it's a loss. I don't care about wins or losses in Summer League. I'm looking at the individual performances and overall. Cut down on some of these turnovers. Try and make your shots a little bit better, and this team will be just fine. Let me know what you think about the first Summer League performance here in the comments on the Locked On Pelicans podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I will do another show Saturday night, so tomorrow night technically, after their game against the Lakers, even if it's just a little bit of a quicker one. I want to touch on what we've seen from them in that game. So we got a bonus show coming this weekend too. And next week, let's get into some of the coaching stuff with the team, because I think that's really interesting. Really interesting. And I'll tell you why. That's a tease for a future show here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. I'll be back with y'all probably at some point this weekend, then for certain on Monday. Go watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Looking forward to talking hoops with y'all next time.